Do you still have any personal experiences with this phenomenon today?
Yeah.
How so?
I witnessed it in 2019. This massive craft come over my house, and I witnessed it. I mean, I'm still thinking about that. That was in 2019, and I got a really, really good look at it. I was afraid, like, for my life at a certain point when it made a maneuver that was very, very violent in a sense. And I'd never seen anything like that big. And I wasn't the only one who saw it. There was a farmer near me. I'm sure other people saw it as well.
How big would you say?
Oh, man, it had to be 100 feet anyway,
Round? Circular?
Yeah. Yeah, but, it wasn't what you'd think, as far as, like, tapered down platform. The platforms on this thing were, like, they went out like this, like fat, right? Fat, long,
Yeah.
two stories anyway, no windows. And it had I could only see the left-hand part of this dome, right? It went up like this. I could see the other side, but I couldn't see I just saw the curve, which was absolutely beautiful. That curve was, yeah, I think about that all the time now.
Did it have a sound?
No, that's what was the most disturbing part about it. Was
no sound.
There was nothing. So in aviation, right, or in flying aviation, it's called air displacement. So like when a balloon's going through the air or anything with mass, the more mass you have. No, I'm okay. Thanks. The more mass you have volume, the more air you can hear the air being displaced. This thing was huge and it had no air displacement. There was not a sound.
Nighttime?
10:22 at night, p.m. And I was outside on the roof of my garage. Yeah. And
any direct contact with beings though?
No.
Nothing.
No. This thing, it was almost like, it was interesting because I had just finished the rough cut of the movie.
It's like
2 weeks before.
Do you think that maybe like what they do to you when they abduct you, when they, like what Gary's talking about with affecting the brain, a part of the brain by making neurons more dense, do you think they're doing something to the brains of these people, yourself included, to where it opens up a perception? It opens up a gateway in the mind to where you can perceive this stuff now.
Yeah, but
that normal people maybe can't see.
Yeah, but there was a farmer who also saw it.
Oh, really?
It was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there were other witnesses to it.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I made a big deal. I went to the police. I went to 3 police stations, two local police stations and the state police. Then I got pardon my English. I got in my plane.
Your plane?
Yeah, I flew down to Westover Air Force Base to talk to the intelligence officer there. And he was supposed to be there. He didn't show up. And then I talked to him on the phone later. I'm like, hey, you guys got a serious security issue here because I'm 20 miles north of you. And you should know what this is, like what this is. And he's like, you mean the drone? I'm like, oh, man, yeah, this is no drone, bro. Like, this thing is 10 miles ahead of anything we have. I mean, it was just stunning. I mean, it was oddly when I saw it, and you go through the list of things like, okay, is this a drone? Is this a Chinese lantern? Is this an aircraft? Right? You go through the whole list. I do. Yeah. I'm very I'm not easily deceived because I grew up with a mechanical background, aviation background. Like you don't jump to conclusions. And then when this thing got closer, I'm like, oh my God! And it was also absolutely beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And there was something peaceful about it, actually, in the experience. And then,
what color was it?
Orange, like a deep sunset orange. Yeah.
Glowing or no?
Well, yeah. It looked like a plasma, right? It looked like a plasma. And then when it crossed in front of the tree in front of me,
the whole surface.
No.
Of it. Okay.
No, it was like a light, And then as it approached me, it crossed in front of the tree in front of me that was 45 feet away. The tree was. And it crossed behind this tree. So you can actually do the math. considering where I did all the stuff already. You can do the math from the position it was viewed from. And then part of the tree blocked out the orange light, and then I could see the rest of it, which is like when you see a light going floating around, and then it gets blocked out, and you see this massive thing that is not making any sound whatsoever, and it's the craft itself. It had rings, right? Like there was a metallic ring. That's the first thing that caught my eye, running through the center of it, all around the circumference. I could only see that, and it had like a heat. When you heat a metal, there's a rainbow effect, like a purplish, like sort of rainbow effect that happens. It's kind of like tinsel.
Yeah.
This sort of flashiness, that's what caught my eye initially after the light got blocked. And then I saw, so it was like a very metallic, not silver, it was a darker kind of gray color.
Was it glowing like Chris Bledsoe describes the orbs, like the entire thing glows, or is it like an engine source?
Oh,
or?
no. It's like it looks like an orb, right? Or whatever people refer to it as an orb. So that orange light, which looks like a ball of orange with like a red tinge to it, and it looks like plasma. It's like a light that doesn't. It's very strange. I mean, as soon as I saw it, I don't think I blinked for 45 seconds because I was not going to take my eyes off that thing. And I started to go through the routine of what is this, try to identify it. And then when it got blocked by the tree, and then I saw the rest of it, which is enormous. I started to get scared, of course. But the rest of it was lit by like a white light, that there was no source, and so you had this ring in the middle that had that rainbow effect on it. There was a black ring above it and below it, and then below was silver and above was silver, and then the dome was also silver on top. There was no windows. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen technologically.
Any kind of crazy movements it made?
Yeah, dude, this is what is really kind of stunning to me, just because I have an engineering background and I build things, and I love flying. I don't know. I'm an engineer at heart, and dude, this thing wobbled.
Wobbled?
Yeah, it was not stable.
Like how? Like use this Zin can and show me how it wobbled.
Like this, kind of like it was slight.
Just slowly side to side.
Huh?
Like an off-balance gyroscope?
I guess so, but it was slower than that, That was, I just couldn't even make sense of that myself. For such a technological object like that to wobble, actually, I think about it. Obviously, if I built it, it would not wobble. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to make sure it looked really sleek.
Right.
They don't seem to care about that.
Interesting.
So when it broke out of the trees, I knew I was going to get another clear look at it again, and that's when it did this sort of violent move, like counterclockwise, rotated very quickly. That's when I got really, I put my hands down on the ground.
This is it.
And yeah, and then I was looking at another sort of perspective of it, where there was a platform on the back. It sort of hung underneath it, and there was a white thing under it that looked like a tank, propane tank or something. And it made me think, because I didn't know about the Tic Tac at this point.
Like a propane tank.
Yeah, like a white tank with no seams on it. It looked, the first way I described it was like a casket, And then underneath that was another platform that was just hanging there. Like there was no attachment to the object, and on that platform there was like when I first saw it, it's like a white box, curved edges, it looked super advanced, and it had a little pole on it with a red light. And in my mind, I'm like, that's a power supply, because I worked as an electrician for a long time in commercial.
Interesting.
But it wasn't anything that I've seen us make at all. And then that orange light, which was not on me anymore, had gone around the ring of it and got toward the back of it, very close to where it was, as it was right here. And then it got big and just went.
Whoa.
Dude, I stood up there for 20 minutes just with my jaw dropped. I felt like a Neanderthal, man. Like, honest to God, they are so far ahead of us. Yeah.
And it was you and another farmer who saw this.
Oh, I'm sure a bunch of people saw it. The farmer,
How far away? Yeah, how far away was he?
he was probably 2 miles away. I was probably a couple hundred yards when I first, probably 300 or 400 yards when I first saw it. And then the kind of, I'm living here, I'm on the roof of the garage, and it's coming this way. And then, so it's approaching me the whole time. And when it departed, it was about right here. So when it departed, I'd say 150. Here's the weird thing. That thing, there was no sound even in that. I saw it go. It
Right.
disappeared into the stars. And I have no idea the speed, but I would imagine within a second it was over Boston, which is the direction where it went. I'm not kidding.
That's crazy, man.
But there was no magnetic field. There was no, I didn't feel any impact. There was no pressure wave of nothing. Like, I don't quite understand the physics involved in what I witnessed. And that there was zero sound through the whole thing. And it wasn't some kind of projection or what do you call it?
No hologram.
It's not a hologram because
Right.
so the farmer, he was about two or 3 miles away from me, and he saw it from his angle, and I know where he was, and so I went to talk to him. He got all nervous and said, "I don't want to talk about it."
Really?
That's what happens because it's not open, and people are nervous about what are their neighbors going to think. They're afraid of what the government may do. Shut them down. It's not a great atmosphere for openness.
Do you think?
But that's the last time I saw.
Do you
something like
suspect you're going to get any sort of backlash from talking about these experiences on
Probably.
the podcast?
Oh, definitely. I've only seen a very small part of this population, whoever these things are. I've seen, a science team multiple times.
And you always saw the same exact beings. You never saw like human beings
No.
or like.
No, and they were the same crew.
It was the same exact crew.
That's the way
How do you know that?
you
though?
can feel it.
Really?
Yep. You feel it. Yep. Yep.
Do you get the feeling that they were biological, or did you get the feeling that they were like created?
No, they were not machines.
They were not machines.
If they were machines, they were biological machines, but they
Right?
weren't.
Could they have been like biologically created in a lab or
Maybe,
something?
maybe, but they're very real and very sentient. And anyway, there's and they come in 4 every single time.
They always come in
It's
4.
4. Yep, there's something about the
think
number 4, man. With
That's
them.
what. That's
Who said that?
Who said that? Well, I believe that Michael Cleland said that as well.
Yeah.
The owl and UFO guy. You know him?
I don't. But
Oh, okay. I thought you knew him.
I mean, it's every single time, 4 of them. Jeez.
No reproductive organs.
Nope. Never saw anything like that. It's really bizarre. Really bizarre.
And you said you experienced the same smell that Whitley experienced.
Yeah. I described it as burnt lint.
Burnt lint. Yeah, he described it as like burning cardboard.
So that's so fascinating. So when I was 11 years old when I what was it? I was like a teenager when I described that.
Yeah.
I think I was 11 years old.
And you experienced it. You described something in that chapter of abductions the same way Whitley describes it. Is he says that when he was, you said you weren't regressed, but he said when he was regressed, he was like jumping timelines in his regressions to back when he was like from like 15 to 10. I think the earliest he went was 10 years old. And you said you went from like a 10-year-old memory back to a 3-year-old memory.
Correct. Oh, so yeah. I mean, I did do regression. But it wasn't very. It just brought me into the trauma. So I did remember some things, but I tend not to put as much stock as I do with what I saw with my own eyes and felt with my own body, right? But though I don't take that away from anyone. I think those, and I did say that, right? That it brought me back to 3, which was 1970, 1971, which is when I think that's when it began.
You think it began around there?
I do. I mean, I know that we've just
At least with you.
Right. We've discussed it in my family.
Mm-hmm.
So there were some events that occurred. I brought it up. You know, I had to. When you see stuff like this initially, and you don't know what it is.
And Whitley said
it took me 20 years to believe it myself.
And Whitley said it was happening to other people in his family as well. Like he would experience his other family members like on these crafts, or like he would see them there.
I can't. Yeah. That's yeah. He said that.
Yeah. And communion.
Mm-hmm. I haven't read it, so I stay away from the books because I don't need to read them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I don't. When I do read them, I just get more traumatized. You know, I'm not learning any. It does. Yeah. It reminds me of things I have kind of isolated out of my memory. They're still there. I just keep them locked up.
Have you ever thought about like, are there, out of all the public abductees or private abductees that you've talked to, do you suspect any sort of commonality or any sort of pattern in the people that they choose? Like the type of people, something about them?
They're all very intelligent. That, like, I went for a long time. I was curious, like, who are they? Well, first of all, why me? You know, and then also, who's out there? Like, who else is this happening to? What's the common denominator?
Yes.
That became a big
Right.
curiosity for me.
Yes.
So, I mean, some of these people are off the charts geniuses. Some of these abductees that I've met.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they can read an entire book that's 500 pages long, and then 2 years later, they can quote you line by line out of that chapter. If you're asking about, oh yeah, that was page 56. And
Photographic memories.
photographic memories, correct. And then, so I think it's a mix of range, and I think there's multiple reasons, but I definitely noticed the brain part because I've met so many just crazy, intelligent people, females and males, and then there's another element that maybe they picked, I don't know, for genetic reasons, or I don't know. But I try to figure that out. I have not come to a conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
But you definitely wonder what it's about. So, that was a big deal for me, was to have it confirmed by the intelligence community, and that happened in 2021, for real. But there was no
Have what confirmed by
implication
the intelligence community?
that I had really been going through what I was going through, personally.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How did they confirm this to you?
Conversation. And I can't go too, but I can't say anything who it was, but I knew they were the real deal, and I appreciated that. Actually, it made a big difference for me. You know, when I got that confirmation,
This is wild.
well, probably not for a lot of people, but I'm in the circles, so I people know this.
Really?
Yeah, people know. I mean, I'm probably not the only one it's happened to. You're taken aback. By
Somebody in the intelligence community confirmed to you that your personal experiences are real.
that. Correct. Huge for me.
In 2021.
2021.
How do you know this person was legit?
Because I could find him. You know, I could
On
look.
like LinkedIn or something?
Correct. No. I could look him up, and huge resume. I knew who he worked for, and there was no reason for him to say what he said, and he actually gave examples. So, and that, I mean, it just, when you go through this your entire life and you're questioning your own sanity around
His
it.
first name wasn't Jim, was it?
No.
Okay.
I know who you're talking about. I had a conversation with him too.
Yeah.
I did. And
Yeah,
he-
I did too.
You did?
I had a phone call with him. Yeah.
Wow. No, he was. I also got confirmation from him in a big sense too. There were several people actually, but it was one in particular who sat me down. We left our phones, went out to a back couch, back out of this whole area.
Mm-hmm.
Had a private conversation, and I laughed through a lot of it because I thought he was joking, you know? And he said, no, really. You really have to listen to this. And he said quite a few things, but it was...
How do these people feel about this?
I think they know it's going to come out.
But how do they how does it personally affect those people? Do they tell you how they feel about it, how it affects their lives, like knowing this kind of stuff and not being able to share it with anybody?
Well, can you imagine, they're sort of been in the audience, essentially watching this happen, knowing it's real for a long time. So I think in some of these people I've met that they feel good finally that they're doing the right thing. You know?
Are they afraid of it?
I think it's a mixture. Same with everybody. It's a mixture of awe and fear. Like, and I think that's true because this could literally change all of our lives in a positive way and help rescue us in a sense. I hope so, but it's also terrifying. But I feel like those people I've interacted with feel like they're getting a weight off their chest, like that this is something they feel good about. This is not an operation where they're, you know, making here we're going to do this to do this. There's heart involved, and I can tell they actually care, and that's a relief. That's been a relief. I can't believe what's been happening in the last year. It's really
in the last year.
Yeah, I mean it's been going on but just this past year has been unbelievable.
How so?
Just all that's happened, the threats, the people I've met with.
Oh, the threats, yeah.
Yeah, and the conversations I've had. It's hard to keep up with it. You know, I also have to live my life and work on my next film. And it's like I've been spending a lot of time just like taking in what's happening because it's hard to believe, and you do have to vet everybody. You know, you really do. You have to be very careful what you believe and who it's coming from and if there is an agenda, what is their agenda. But yeah, it's just, and I know I'm not the only one going through this. A lot of people are. Yeah. And I have to always remember, like, I'm kind of on the edge of the curve, you know, edge of the cutting edge of it, essentially, because I demand to be there because it's affected me and affected a lot of people I love and know, and everybody in the movie and everything I've done too. I have to realize the public is not quite there and they won't be there for a while. And that's okay. I have to be patient, which is why I would love to share a lot more. It's just, I just don't think it's going to serve me or the whole disclosure. I think we need to be talking about the craft, and I can't believe we even got into the back-end engineering recovery program. That was a shock. Like, I thought that would come way down the line, but no, it was like the first thing. Oh man, it was a shock.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how do you feel about it? Like, even hearing what I'm saying, does it set your meters off?
I'm still kind of like absorbing the whole I'm kind of on the fence about the nuts and bolts part of it, like with the things that the Navy pilots are seeing. I think I tend to think that stuff is probably ours, like stuff that the military has control of, because why else would it be in a Navy pilot, like a training area for Navy pilots, right? Like, it would make sense that if these guys had just upgraded the radar in their planes, we might want to test some like black military projects on them and see like how it works against our top Navy fighter pilots, right? And I know that, you know, I've read about and I've read the history on like agencies like DARPA and like some of the black projects that they've been working on forever. And, you know, obviously all of this disclosure stuff has to do with, it revolves around these aerospace companies that are trying to keep secrets, right? They're protected. You can't FOIA them because they're private companies. And I think that's what David Grush was basically blowing the whistle about like his job was to keep track of money, right? And he was seeing that all this money was going unaccounted for to these companies, and like all these budgets were going to them, and they didn't have to disclose anything that they were working on. And I think it was Lockheed Martin and
Northrop.
Yeah, in Ohio, right? So, you know, obviously these companies have huge secrets and they're spending tons of money on stuff. You know, it's it makes sense that they've probably figured out anti-gravity, and they probably have developed something. If I was to bet, right? If I had to make a bet on whether an American aerospace company figured out crafts that the way Graves and Fravor described them, I would bet that we have figured that out. Not to say that, you know, this phenomena, I think this abduction phenomenon is a whole separate thing. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around it because it's just there's no evidence for it. B, it is just like, it blows your perception of the universe out of the water that this kind of stuff could actually be happening. That we are fish in a fish tank that are being, you know, reeled up out of the water and poked and prodded and then put back into the water, like, you know, pulled out of the literal time stream and being like looked at and experimented on by something that we don't know what the fuck it is. That is just like, that's really hard to grasp. Like I've been thinking about it for a long time now, and it's still something that I think would really break a lot of people if it became something that was like accepted by the government, and this is what it is. Like if they let this out to the public, I think it would really break a lot of people.
I agree. That's why it's got to be carefully done.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I have no question. I mentioned it. Had a lot of conversations on it lately. I mentioned it to somebody recently. When I was in South Africa and Zimbabwe, particularly South Africa. I went to the Air Force Base, a couple of them, to say, "Hey, can I get in and speak with you?" And amazingly, I thought they would just stop me at the door. I told them what I was doing, a documentary on this issue, and the commander said, "Yeah, come on in." He invited me into this Air Force Base, the main building, and he was a commander. He brought a lieutenant colonel with him, female, blonde hair, and I asked them, "Do you guys see this stuff? Do you know about this?" And they're like, "Oh yeah." They were just very matter of fact about it, and I've also found this in South America, another military I was speaking with. And he said to me, we can tell on radar the difference between the American version, the Russian version, and the real thing.
What?
Yeah. That's exactly what I said. I was like, what are you talking about? I had never heard that before.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And the lieutenant colonel's right there. And I'm looking at her. I'm like, are these people bullshitting me? Because I didn't know. And I'm like, oh no, they're really for real. So I was there for probably 20 minutes, and they were sharing this stuff with me. But what it turned.
And they had no idea who you were.
I had been on the radio over there, trying to bring out the aerial witnesses and other witnesses in Africa. Mm-hmm. Because when I was doing aerial, I was also interviewing tons of other witnesses from other events as well. So I think they may have known, they had heard I was in town. It's not a very, if you're in the media in Africa, people know.
Okay.
So, that kind of, it makes me think about what you're talking about. That do we? Probably. We have great engineers. We've been doing a lot of Townsend Brown, electrogravitic work for quite a long time. So it wouldn't surprise me if we have operational vehicles. And according to certain people I've talked to, like him, and apparently we do. But here's the question, like on this whole phenomenon, this stuff's been flying around for a long time. Before, since at least World War II that we've been seeing it.
Right.
And it's no different than what we're seeing today. It's the same behavior, same everything. So that tells you it's likely not us that did this, unless there was some breakaway civilization that somehow managed to engineer and keep it completely separate from everybody else back before World War I, World War II,
Right.
That's hard. That's a little more hard for me to believe. But this phenomena has been reported all the way back to the early stages of humanity in one way or another.
Right. In the beginning of this conversation, you were saying that you are aware of abductions still happening today.
Yeah.
Do you think
Nothing's changed.
Do you think any of the abductions that are happening today are anything similar to what the stuff that you were experiencing was? Like with extracting bodily fluids from people and like the same sort of like reproduction experiments?
Yeah.
Very similar.
Who is putting out that dialogue that this is changed?
Nobody's putting out the dialogue. That's the thing.
Right.
Nobody's putting out anything about something that's anything new that's happened. At least that I've seen.
Maybe that's the way they want to portray it, so people will adjust to it and not realize that there's this other aspect. Maybe
I just haven't seen anything anywhere or heard anything anywhere of anyone new talking about this stuff happening. And I don't know if that's just because I don't know if the reason we only hear about stuff that happened 20 years ago is because that's like naturally how long it takes somebody to be comfortable to talk about this stuff, or if people are just choosing not to talk about it, or if it's being suppressed or whatever.
Yeah, I think all those are true.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to come to terms with it. And for sure, it can take 20 years. Yeah, it sure isn't easy. But I would... if you want to answer that, there's investigators you should speak with who are seeing people and getting the reports.
What kind of investigators?
Through MUFON, I believe, has their own department for abductions, for people to contact them. I think also a lot of people saw what happened to the people I was around that whole time and how abused we got by the media and ridiculed, and oh my God, it was brutal. And that maybe that has informed their decision not to be public about it. But I've met quite a few that it's ongoing, and if it has stopped, great. But I just don't believe that's the truth.
Is there a certain like geographical area that it seems to happen more than others? Do they stay away from big cities? Do they only go to like open?
No, it's everywhere.
Rural land.
I think big cities less so, but it's all over the planet. I had a woman from Japan approach me at one of my screenings recently. I mean, this is fascinating, and this is the most rewarding part for me personally. Is people approach me at my screenings afterwards, and they say they'll give me a note, or they'll just tell me like, thank you for validating my experience. It's been happening since I was a child. Or that's the most beautiful thing, and I always share it with my crew because my people I worked with, like, hey, this is the kind of effect you have. We've got stacks of letters and emails from people and yes, this woman from Japan recently approached me. I'm like, oh my God, I mean, I knew it was everywhere. I've met people from China, Japan, all over pretty much every single country at this point. It's the same thing. The same thing. We think we have borders. This operation doesn't have any. They're covering the entire planet.
Are there any accounts or stories people have told you that just doesn't fit into anything you've ever heard? Or like, has there ever been something where someone came to you and be like, look, this is what happened to me, and you were like, whoa, I've never heard of this before?
No.
or like any new kind of beings that they describe that you've never heard of, or
Well, yeah, maybe I've heard a few, but it's pretty consistent.
it is.
It's pretty consistent. That's the other thing that's why people started researching it, was the consistency amongst stories, even from people separated by oceans, all across the world, was the consistencies of many things, not just the description of these creatures, but the procedures, the technology. It's
that's all
repetitive.
consistent.
It's all consistent. So there's a strong body of work. I think it's 90% the same, and then there's 10% that are these outliers that people experiencing reptile-like creatures and this and that. I don't know, but 90% of them are these little 4-footers.
Have you ever asked them or communicated with them, asked them who they were?
I don't think you have the chance to do that. I don't know. You just don't.
Because it seems like there were a lot of people who did ask them that, at least from some of the accounts.
In what position?
The accounts that I've read about in various books of abductees or people that have just ran into these things, like randomly in the middle of Colorado or Utah or somewhere. Maybe not all abductees, but at least like having face-to-face encounters with them where they would communicate with them telepathically. I know there was a few of them in Mike Masters' book, Extraterrestrial Model. He lays out at least a half dozen accounts, documented accounts, where people asked them like where they were, who they were, or where they were from. You've never talked to anybody who had anything to say about that?
It's just limited. You're limited. I mean, it depends on the individual situation.
Because even Whitley says he talked to the being telepathically, and he asked like how old it was, and it told him it was ancient.
Right. God, I got to talk to Whitley. It's been a while. Oh my God, yeah, that's funny. No, you can. It reminds me, like people say, well, if you're on the spacecraft, like why didn't you get this? It's like, dude, you're thinking about survival. Period. I mean, that's the kind of mixed in thing, unless you're under some kind of their anesthetic, which is electrical in nature, by the way. It's difficult to get those questions in, because that's not what hasn't been with me. That's not been my primary. Like I would like to survive,
Right. And what about like the little? He talks about these like little like grunty, beefy looking creatures that were like the workhorses, the ones that would like carry you out of the house and like get you into the woods to get elevated up into the spacecraft. Like there was 2 different ones, or 3 different ones. He explained the human looking ones, the little 4-footers, and he explained these other like really little like ogre looking ones that he explained were like the workhorses that would be doing like the labor, the physical labor to like move people.
Oh, I don't think they needed that for me anyway, but yeah, no, I don't remember them at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, Randy, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, man.
This has been fun.
I won't be able to sleep tonight.
You won't?
No.
Why?
Anytime I talk about this stuff, it just ripples for several days.
Well, like I was telling you on the phone earlier too, like I don't know if I've had enough time to process it yet or what it is, but Michael Masters' hypothesis of this extraterrestrial time traveler idea is just the most compelling thing that I've read on this subject, because there's so many pieces of the puzzle that fit, right? Like you have them caring about the planet, Rua, Zimbabwe, communicating to these kids that they need to protect the planet and watch out for technology. Like future humans have a huge stake in this planet. Way more so, I would imagine, than some sort of extraterrestrial from another star system would. Number one. Number two, he's an anthropologist. He understands human evolution, understands how rare we are on Earth. There's over 2 million cataloged species of animals on this Earth. 20 of them are hominids. One of the 20 is us, making it like we're like 0.00001% of all living species on Earth that are upright walking hominids, and we're the ones that were able to create technology that could leave the planet. Now, I think all of the other Goldilocks planets that we're aware of that can inhabit life, they have different atmospheres, way different gravity. Some are binary star systems, meaning that the way life develops there is so much different than life develops here, meaning that it would be almost probably safe to say impossible for life to develop to look like us, upright walking hominids with 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, 2 forward facing eyes with the brain that sits directly on top of the head, especially when you account for the fact that most of those planets that exist, they're Goldilocks planets, are water worlds. So like the fact that these things care about the planet, they look so similar to us. And he looked at hominids from millions of years ago and basically extrapolated to where we are now, how we've evolved from early chimpanzees. And he extrapolated that out into the future and said, we will, fully grown adults, way out in the future, will look like the offspring of our offspring right now. It's a term called pedomorphism, where basically newborn, if you look at our ancestors, like if you look at early chimps, newborn chimps, they look like human children today. But when the chimps evolve, or when they grow up and they become adults, their head goes back, slopes back, the mouth comes out, comes forward like that. And if you extrapolate, our future descendants, maybe thousands, hundreds of thousands of years from now, fully grown, will look like our children today. Mm-hmm. This is coming from a biological anthropologist. So it's super compelling to me, this idea. You don't seem convinced, though.
Well, bears spend an awful lot of time on 2 legs, way more than people think, walking upright. I've seen it, and
but not
anyway. Well, I know it's just I don't know. I try not to. I think the most important thing, because hey, this species could have evolved here. Mm-hmm. That's possible. Mm-hmm. Could be time travel. I'm not excluding anything. Mm-hmm. I've heard so many ideas pitched, and I think it's great. We need to do that, absolutely. But the most important thing for me and a lot of other people is let's just admit that they're here first. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter where they're from. Right. We'll figure that out. Mm-hmm. And we need as many scientists like Michael. I think I've met him a few times. Yeah. Michael Masters. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's great what he's doing. And everyone is. I mean, geez, there's so many people that are just doing incredible work. Yeah.
And there's also like so many of these abduction accounts talk about extracting eggs from women, sperm from men, even like the aliens having sex with the abductees, like with Whitley Strieber's account or David Huggins. You're familiar with David Huggins, right? He's a guy. Yeah. He's in Hoboken, New Jersey. Wild shit like that. You would almost like, the first time I ever became aware of any of this was watching David Huggins' documentary that Brad Abrams made, and I was just like, this guy's nuts.
Right.
Right. That's your reaction to it. Of course it is. I lost my virginity to an alien with huge tits. And he drew these paintings, these amazing paintings. I need to buy one of his paintings.
Yeah, I know. I understand.
But like, they all have to do with reproduction. Yeah. Right. And if you look at the direction the human race is going right now, with sperm count, with testosterone levels, with the development of technology and our foods being more processed, and pesticides, monocrop agriculture being like, with all, Monsanto and all these companies basically just like laying these fields with all these pesticides that are people are getting cancer from them. It's like dropping fertility rates, the plastics, the microplastics, and everything comes in plastic. Yeah. And these microplastics are how Dr. Shauna Swan came in here, and she described how since we've been testing testosterone levels and sperm count levels since the 50s, and since the 50s they've been dropping 1 to 2% every year. And if you look at the drop in birth rates now, I mean, it's not just the biology of it, but it's also the culture of it. You know, now women are getting careers and they don't want to have children when they're young anymore. We're becoming more and more homogenized and domesticated as a species. And if you take this and you extrapolate this into the future with the more technology evolves and just the way this world is going right now, there's no way to turn that ship around. So if this, just like go with the theory that it is future humans for a second, then you take in the account of any sort of natural cosmic cataclysm or a nuclear exchange that could happen that would severely destroy a huge part of the human population, and people would be forced, inbreeding would happen in that case, and it would severely bottleneck our gene pool. So if hypothetically in the future this happened and we were able to figure out backward time travel, wouldn't we want to send, maybe not biological beings, but maybe we would want to send genetically created 3D printed robots back in time to harvest specimens, semen from our ancestors to try to diversify the gene pool of the future if it is being bottlenecked by something like this? That hypothesis, I mean, I know it's a stretch, but the hypothesis makes
complete
a lot of sense.
It's it's a great hypothesis. I mean, our planet's in trouble, period. We're it doesn't matter. Like, if they were, I'll just make an argument. What if they are traveling back to the future? They're a little late. They should have done that. I mean, from the future, they're a little late because we're in more and more serious trouble. But you also have to understand another species, and this is also theoretical or speculative. They may be looking at us like we do when I spent a lot of time in Africa with primatologists and all these other wildlife people and organizations, and they monitor the wildlife. They care about them. They care for them to a certain level, and then when they get out of hand or their environment starts to suffer from too many elephants, so to speak, they mow forests down. You would not believe the destruction. So then
elephants do?
Yeah. They devastate an area. And then what they have to do is they'll shut that area off and move them into a whole nother area. We're talking sometimes millions of acres. They'll shut off a quarter of it and let it regrow.
Right.
Because the elephants have devastated it. And then they cull them to keep them, their populations to a certain, when a species overpopulates, you start to get more disease. So anyway, I just see it that I think we're just in a very critical place in our planets, and I think maybe another species like we do values this place for maybe us, but it's probably not just us. There's millions and millions of other species, and maybe there's not a lot of that out there. Plus, we're a resource. We have a lot of resources here, chemical, genetic, just a ton.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that we have to just realize that it's happening at all before we can really start to get to.